So this is my fidget spinner that we use to make decisions. So the question is, what investment should I do, or should I go forward with the investment? Let's see. It says sit on it. I have no idea what that means. But listen, frankly, that's how some people make investment decisions. It seems somewhat random. I think I would love today, Raul, as we do our Barita Brain Trust podcast, just talk about how we are making investment decisions, especially in this environment. You said something to me yesterday about bubble or what you said, base?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
All right, well, the idea of that is just, okay, so the stock market has been very hot, it's done very well. And then the question becomes, is it like, are you approaching a stock market bubble?
Yeah,
right?
People been asking that.
Or are we establishing a new base economically with everything that we've done and everything that we've achieved as a country, you know, the transformative changes, establishing a new base from which to grow further and accelerate growth? So that's the question, really. That's really what that's about.
I think that's a key question that people would love to ask. And then worse or better, we have in November, we're supposed to be ending the IMF agreement that we have. I mean, how did we even get there? So maybe that would be helpful to just talk about. How did we get there? And then what has that meant for Jamaica's economy? And then by extension, what would that mean for an investor?
Yeah. Today's a special day. I mean,
it's your birthday.
It is my birthday, but that's all I was thinking about. But yeah, that's true. I get to talk about Jamaica land we love. And as far as what you were talking about with IMF, that's a big deal. You know, this last 6 or so years, that's really been the main characterizer, you know, if you will, of the Jamaican economic environment, the economic landscape, being with the IMF. So I think it's November 8th.
Right.
We're done with the current program. So that's a big deal. We think it's a good idea to just kind of look at what it's meant, what's happened, what we've achieved, and what that means for us as a country, what that means for individuals, investors all over the world, and what kind of options that creates for them.
So like, if you could do a sort of summary, bullet points, what are the things that have happened since we've done this IMF program? What landmarks have we hit?
Kind of the highlights.
The highlights,
right? Yeah, so the big deal, the big number is when I think it was where our debt peaked was about 147% of GDP.
That's right.
So as of the last formal review that was published, we were around 95 to, I think, no, we're maybe 98.5% of GDP. So we're below 100.
Nice.
Right? That's a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, that's well over 47 percentage points of GDP.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. No, it is quite huge. I mean, and if you're at 98.5, then it's about 48.5% and if you're at 95, then you clear 50, right? Okay. So that's what's made the finance minister kind of rock star, right? You know, we've garnered attention from the international press. So we saw the Financial Times afford the finance minister op-ed piece to really talk about that whole consolidation that we did without international aid.
Right.
Right. And then the Prime Minister has kind of earned his stripes as a fiscal manager on the world stage as a result. So as a team effort across multiple administrations, we've accomplished a big debt consolidation.
That's right.
And that's probably the biggest thing from a financial history point of view.
That's right.
Unemployment is at record low. Yeah. So the last numbers I saw were in around 7.8%.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
And that's near the lowest it's been, or about the lowest it's been in Jamaican history.
Right.
Right. So those are kind of the big key milestones, if you will. Jamaica has suffered from low growth.
Right.
Right. So we've been sub 1% for the long term, and I think the number depending on the time that you look at, average growth is like 0.2%. Right. It's ridiculous. So we've achieved 1.7.
Okay.
Last year on a trailing 4-month basis at one point. I think that was Q4 2018.
Okay.
So even though it's modest, right, and we've gone as high as 1.9% recently, it is a step change from where we were.
Right.
Right. So coming up from 0.1, 0.2, 0.6, going up to 1.7, 1.9. That's a big change. So those are kind of the big achievements that we can point to coming out of this IMF cycle.
Right. So you said the debt is down,
Yeah.
unemployment is down, there is growth in the economy as far as GDP is concerned.
Yeah, and the other one, infrastructure spending.
Okay.
So so the last 3 years, the infrastructure spend in Jamaica has tripled.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tripled.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, enough said, right? That's a big deal. So those are kind of the things that we can point at this point.
And we know reserves are up as well.
Reserves are up. Yeah.
Right?
That's
so,
good. That's good.
We always talk about having your treasure chest, the bigger, being ready for anything.
Well, that's more like an insurance policy. Eh?
Yeah.
You know, we back the currency. I think we clear 3 billion in terms of international reserves.
Okay.
Right. So our reserve coverage is good in terms of weeks of imports. Right. And we have money to make investors comfortable, and that we're able to deal with any kind of shocks that could come. Because one of the things we saw happening like 2008 with that shock is confidence was lost globally amongst investors in Jamaica.
Yes.
And then you just saw the reserves kind of collapse.
Right.
I mean, $1 billion of reserves just kind of burnt up in the wake of that. So having, and in 2013, the reserves were just falling, right? So we were sub 1 billion in terms of reserves at one point. So really to be here talking about a $3 billion number, that's again another tripling, right? So yeah, that is a big deal. That is a big deal as far as confidence in the economy, confidence in the currency, confidence in our external position. It's good. And we eliminated our budget deficit.
Okay.
So again, that's gigantic. So the government of Jamaica, for the most part, does not run a central government deficit.
And just explain that, just for listeners to understand what that would mean. Just for clarity.
Yeah, sure. So what it is the revenue
Yes.
that the government receives by way of taxation and a bit of grants does not exceed what we spend in the form of wages and interest payments, etc., etc. Everything that government does. So all the ministries, all the departments, all the agencies, collecting the garbage, the police force, the fire department, the hospitals, all of that. All of that expenditure historically had exceeded what the government collected, and therefore it had to borrow. And that's what drove the debt. But where we are right now is fiscal discipline is entrenched in Jamaica. Right. And really eliminating that deficit for all intents and purposes. I think, we're negative 0.2% of GDP at one point. If you look at the table, you'll see negative 0.2, but then you see positive 0.3 the next year. So, we're pretty balanced. As a result of that, we've been able to pay down the debt, and that's why it's come down as much as it has.
I mean, and you say again, just bringing it down in a simple way, if Jamaica was an eligible bachelor, the reality is what you say, you're talking about a gentleman who he's at a point where he's earning more money. Right? He's not spending more than he earns. People have confidence in his abilities and what's there locally and internationally. You're talking about a true eligible bachelor right there.
You can date
that's
your daughter,
Jamaican and he can date your daughter. So and that's why I can imagine now why in 2018 we had the best stock market in the world. And even a report came out that, as the year we're so far, 2019, we're more than likely hitting that so far.
Yeah, I think we were number one according to Financial Times.
Right.
Year to date. Yeah, man.
So even just going back to your original thing about
35%.
bubble or base, everything you said before explains why the stock market has been doing so well, why people have confidence in the economy. There's a lot going on for infrastructure. Infrastructure means a lot for businesses.
Yes.
Right? I think you were talking about that a bit with me yesterday.
Yeah.
I'd just love you to even talk about that, the impact that the infrastructure has had on the economy. Because right now, people feeling the pressure of, boy, this road work and the pressure that's there. But what does that mean for a business when we complete something like this?
Yeah, so infrastructure is a big deal, right? I remember hearing I was listening to a news report once. They were talking about an IMF study that found that for every dollar spent on infrastructure, a country can reap $10 worth of growth, which is that's just huge, right?
Okay.
That's gigantic. So I've not even been willing to trust my ears. I've been telling myself, I've been misremembering, right? But even if we say we're going to be modest and we put that at $3 or puts at $2 for every dollar spent on infrastructure, you realize that it is a big opportunity. So if we size up infrastructure, the infrastructure opportunity in Jamaica, first of all, you're able to do it because of the debt pay down. Right. So that's a direct. You can almost make a direct correlation because infrastructure is expensive.
Yes.
Right. So traditionally in Jamaica, what would happen is that we would have optimistic revenue projections. When we read the budget, the tax revenue doesn't come in as high as we think.
Yes.
And then we have to cut to meet the budget. And usually what you cut is capital spending.
Right.
Right, which is where infrastructure is balled up. So again, bubble or base, we have a new paradigm now. So it could be a new, it really, the table is set to establish a new base from which to grow. The new paradigm is that now, actually, the last couple of years, when we set a revenue target, we've been exceeding it. Right?
Okay.
So what you find is that as the government has eradicated the deficit and paid down debt, there's been more money available, right? Even more than we had budgeted for. So we have wiggle room, if you will.
Right.
So if you look at the last 3 years up to January 2019, the infrastructure spend has actually been 10% more than budgeted.
Okay.
Right, the cumulative infrastructure spend. So when we talk about infrastructure, and capital spending in general, we all see it in Jamaica, right? The big road works, right? The big road projects. And I'm going to talk about the traffic and whatever inconvenience, but at the end of the day, you see the flyover, right? You see that. You see that's a transformative asset, public asset. And back to that number about investing $1 and reaping 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever dollars worth of growth. If you think about it intuitively, it makes sense because let's say you're a business and you're running your wares from Kingston or from Spanish Town to Ocho Rios, right? You have to send a truck over Mount Russell, right?
Let's say Mount Russell, yes.
Every week, maybe even every day. And you and I know that you almost guaranteed delays on that road.
Yes.
So you think about the north-south highway link and how much easier that makes, logistics.
Right.
You can maybe send 2 trucks. You can maybe send 2 trucks. You can maybe you can make your inventory maybe that more efficient.
That's right.
Right? But, a man sitting in Kingston thinking about spending a weekend at a resort or a tourist coming in and thinking about making that move, it becomes that much easier to move from Kingston to Ocho Rios, right? Because of that infrastructure link.
Right.
So, and along the way, the business opportunities pop up around infrastructure. So this is where I'm thinking about it and I'm saying, it could be $10,
Okay.
It really, because if you think about it, you cut a road and you have advertisement opportunities.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Barita billboards all over the highway.
Yeah.
Right? So that's growth, that's commerce.
Yes.
Right? You have you have an artery that can transport more goods. Right? So in terms of the quantum or the flow of goods, that increases. You have ease of transportation. So it's what, 45 minutes now?
Yeah.
Right? To move from Kingston to Ocho Rios. So if, again, thinking about a 45-minute trip to a resort is an easier decision to make for an individual than to think about spending 2 hours on Mount Russell. Right? So you really can catalyze commerce. Right? Not to mention waterworks, not to mention medical facilities that then now make an area more livable. So that brings housing development, that brings commercial development, that brings transport. It really, the infrastructure really is a game changer.
That's important. That's important. And I really what you see, again, when government and policymakers make that sort of investment, that serves as a sort of catalyst for growth. But then for sure now, that's where, I guess, as you said, the private sector coming in and doing their own investments as well as they see the opportunities opening up. So even on that then, Raul, so you are saying you think this is a base for a new paradigm, economic
We're going to find out. I mean, the case can definitely be made.
Right.
You can definitely make a case that is.
So I know one of the things just to throw out there, clients mention it, boy, things look good, no doubt. There seems to be legitimate reasons for that, but then you have external factors.
Yes.
They don't sort out things with Brexit. There is whispers of a global recession, and everybody says it when the U.S. gets sick, catch a cold,
we get a flu. Yeah.
So the thing is, should we be concerned? Are we at a place right now where we can withstand some of that? What is your thoughts on that?
All right, yeah. So when you have a small open economy and you have external shocks, you know what's a good buffer against that, Sean?
Tell me.
Infrastructure.
Okay.
Right, so we can come back to the whole infrastructure. And the reason for it, if you think about it, is it's a lot of domestic spending. It's a lot of domestic employment.
Right.
So what you're doing, if your customers overseas have less buying power, right, or your private transfers or your investment is your foreign investment reduces because of an external shock. If you have built up reserves, if you have increased fiscal space, and you can domestically stimulate the economy,
right,
it can help to offset that. So we come back to the importance of what we've been talking about, which really is infrastructure. Because if you think about it, if you move from 147% debt to GDP to say 80, right, in a couple of years, what you have is space. So whereas maybe you were exporting, a lot of yams, right, or a lot of bauxite before,
right,
if you take that hit from your customers and you say, you know what, I'm going to spend a little extra on infrastructure, you can offset that a bit, right? Okay. So it comes back to the importance of infrastructure, and it comes back to this idea that it really is a big opportunity for Jamaica. So with the tripling of the spend in the last 3 years, we are still only at 1% of GDP.
Really?
Yeah. So tripling the spend over 3 years has brought us up to 1% of GDP. That's how far we had cut capital spending.
Okay.
Right? So, if we look at Jamaica's history, if we look to the 70s and 80s, say around circa financial year 76, 77, up to financial year 87, 88, we were at minimum 10% of GDP.
Okay.
In terms of spend, in terms of capital spend as a share of GDP.
So basically, you have your revenues at a certain amount. We were spending only about 10% of that. revenue, so to speak.
Well, no, we were spending 10% of GDP.
Okay.
So forget the revenue, the economy. Right?
Okay, wow.
So, I mean, to put that in perspective, Jamaica will approach, Jamaica is about a $2 trillion Jamaican dollar economy, right? So
it really goes to show you how much revenue has been coming in, how high growth has been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what it really shows is how high we can go. So if we're at 1% right now, in the 70s we spiked near 17%.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. So we, the base we maintained above 10%, but we had spikes in the 70s near 17, we had a spike near 15% in the 80s. So that's a huge growth opportunity.
Yeah.
And like, forget the numbers. If you just think about Jamaica, if you think about rural water, if you think about transport links, if you think about the healthcare system, you think about the education system, there is a lot of room to develop this country.
That's right.
Right? So, and as we said before, as central government does that, and people move, capital will follow because opportunities will arise.
Right.
So this is why we mentioned that study before, where infrastructure spend can really catalyze a lot.
That's right.
A lot of growth. So it's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. So we're kind of excited about that.
Any specific recommendations or things that an investor know? Because I said, what would this mean for someone coming into a Barita? How would that affect the type of investment they go after? Yeah. Again, we're hoping that they're not going to spin this. Based on what you're saying, how should they think about allocating their investment?
Yeah, well, as far as specific investments, what this is 2 references. We have a client agreement form that you fill out, and then a proof of address and an ID. You open a Barita account and you get a lot of information and recommendations. Okay. But seriously, we can speak a bit about it. The truth of the matter is, in light of all these opportunities that come, so Trans-Jamaica.
Okay.
For example.
Okay.
Without looking through the numbers and coming up with a formal position, the firm hasn't published a formal position on the IPO as yet, but it's an example of the kind of opportunities that arise.
Yeah, the efficiency in the public sector.
We're gonna definitely get to that, because that's an important thing in terms of if we're gonna really achieve this new base and achieve this potential. Public sector transformation is key to execute that. But if you think about something like Trans-Jamaica giving you an opportunity to invest in the country's infrastructure, that's one way.
Okay.
But as infrastructure is built out and the private sector takes a role in increasing their investment, stocks are another way that you can benefit as an investor.
Of course.
From the companies investing. And I mean, of course, there will also be fixed income opportunities because companies will borrow.
That's right.
And companies will borrow to invest in, if you're going to build a new branch, are you going to build a new restaurant, are you going to build a factory or whatever, because of the increased livability or the increased transport links that capital spending from central government opens up.
Right.
So, yeah, those are the kind of regular, the infrastructure build and where we are in Jamaica in terms of what we've achieved economically will open up investments in stocks, bonds, fixed income, private equity, all of it. Yeah. Right. So that is something that as we engage with our clients, we'd want to have that conversation and keep an eye out to be able to exploit them.
And again, this is why we encourage people to talk about it, the brain trust for us, where at Barita we have some of the brightest men and women in the industry, and a lot of these insights really fuel the recommendations we give to clients. It fuels the type of investments we'll be putting in our funds that we have. Still #1 unit trust in Jamaica, and we intend to keep that going through thinking through the opportunities and saying, okay, how can we put particular investments in these funds so that clients can benefit
Yes.
from them.
Yeah. So we definitely are scouring for those opportunities. But I mean, again, just to talk a bit about what else has been accomplished from a policy perspective, and personally, I tend to agree. The government has communicated a view that security is first and foremost to really establish a new base.
Right.
You know,
That's true.
those are all words, not theirs. The base thing is always not theirs, but it's the same idea. One of the things I think is very important that we accomplished last year was a 20% reduction in murders. Yeah, so that obviously is a big deal.
Okay.
You know, so that I think that's worth noting. Part of the reduction in the primary surplus that we've agreed with the IMF, 0.5 percentage point of GDP, is to actually fund further security capital spending. So
Right.
some of that capital spend will quite a bit will go into security forces, building up barracks and further equipping our security forces so that we can fight crime.
And that makes sense, because when you realize that you feel safer in Jamaica, you would want to invest more.
Yeah.
You want to start new businesses. It's one of the reasons a lot of businesses not even open 24/7
Yeah.
because of security concerns.
Yeah.
You might see that in developed countries, but I think security, for sure, fixing that is going to make a big difference. And that drop is significant. So how much you said? 20%?
20%. 20% in 2018, yeah.
I tell you that does matter.
Yeah, that's lives, right? I mean, like I said to you yesterday, what makes it really hard to invest is if you're murdered, right?
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it's a serious situation where, you know, that particular statistic literally represents lives of Jamaicans. So, you know, the state of emergency is credited with accomplishing that. I mean, however we move forward, the goal should be similar results in terms of bending the curve in terms of the homicide rate in the country. Right? Because when you do that, economic activity, you know, this is not the goal. I mean, preservation of life is a more important thing, but economic activity tends to follow if you improve the security situation.
That's right.
And, you know, estimates have it costing us, like, our crime situation costing us as high as 7% of GDP, which is gigantic, right?
Yeah.
So that really is a important benchmark that we need to look at. So bullet pointing again some of the things we've accomplished.
Yes.
So of course, you know, you have the debt reduction, you have the growth acceleration, though modest still.
Unemployment.
Right, we have unemployment,
Yes.
right, and you know, just all that we've been talking about, and then of course there's the murder reduction in 2018. Going forward, Jamaica still has structural problems, right, and a lot of that, I think the monster in the room is really crime and corruption. So infrastructure was one structural impediment to growth, but we spoke a lot about that.
Right.
Then we have this crime situation and we have the corruption situation. So, you know, it's almost two sides of the same coin.
Yes.
So you have to tackle that. Now, one of the things that can help along that, another problem we have is an inefficient public sector, right? So public sector transformation is kind of targeted or identified as a huge piece of the puzzle to really establish a new base. Right? So as we look at Jamaica, there are things that have been done along those lines. So for example, if you look at state-owned entities in Jamaica, the return on assets there is about negative 0.9%. Right? Yeah.
Wow.
The global average is about 1.9%, positive 1.9%.
That's right.
So we have a ways to catch up.
That's right.
Right?
And I imagine, by the way, the privatization of some of these government-owned assets is a way that they're trying to accomplish that.
Yeah, I think that's a way to shrink the amount of interest government has, so it just becomes easier to manage, right? Traditionally, when our debt exploded, state-owned entities were a huge part. They're actually what drove the debt.
Right.
So it's a big transformation if you're able to divest assets that were a drain on the treasury before and now actually getting money for them through the stock market. So you kind of can go from negative 0.9 to plus 2, which is a big deal.
Right.
Right? So yes, long answer to a short question. The answer is yes. That's part of it. When we look at the public sector situation, and we see that government has taken some steps. Right? So reform to the Procurement Act.
Okay.
The idea there is to smooth the procurement process.
Right.
And really get to a place where once expenditure is approved and budgeted, then there's less discretion over execution. Which sounds, it might sound a little high, but that's a big deal, right? I mean, you can think of stories that you will hear. For example, you have approved and budgeted acquisition of police cars.
Yes.
Right? And in the procurement process,
yes,
it's so bureaucratic that the entire budget year passes.
Okay.
And the cars are not acquired.
Wow.
So talk about inefficiency, because if you're crafting a budget, you put that in your budget last year. This year, you're not necessarily thinking about that.
No.
Right? And that's a whole process. So when you come out with the budget, we have cars already, but no, we don't have cars. Right?
Right.
So that's just an example.
Yes.
That's kind of like a hypothetical. But those are the ways where procurement can really gum up our process. Because if you think about it, cars are important.
Right.
Capital assets are important. So reform to the Procurement Act should help that.
Right.
We're looking at public body boards, right? So instruments of competency.
Merit-based.
Yes. So we're looking to say, okay, we're going to staff these boards with individuals that are experienced and competent in the necessary expertise. So the board is now collectively competent in the field that it's overseeing.
Right.
Right, which kind of maybe sounds intuitive, but it hasn't always been a practice. So if you depoliticize that process, it would help with the efficiency of these bodies.
Right.
Instruments of evaluation. Right. So to ensure that boards are performing at level that they need to perform. These things will help us move that negative 0.9% towards a positive number.
Okay.
In terms of financially, but probably more importantly, will allow the government to act more efficiently, right? So these are steps that have been taken. As far as corruption, the Integrity Commission. The Integrity Commission is supposed to have prosecutorial and investigative powers, right? And they're really geared towards parliamentarians, politicians, and just ensuring that public figures are not engaged or anywhere close to corrupt activity, right? And looking to prevent that as well. And then finally, one of the major things is MOCA. So the major organized crime and anti-corruption agency. I think that's what MOCA is. Moving to strengthen the legislative underpinning of that body.
That's right.
Because their mandate now is to investigate criminal kingpins.
That's right.
Right? Organized crime, major nefarious actors in the society. So to move against them and to prevent corrupt action. So those are things that we've heard about. Those are things that we've seen steps taken in that direction. I think they're important developments that we need to monitor to really increase the confidence that we have that Jamaica is moving towards a better paradigm. I mean, and the last thing I'd say on the public bodies, it's very simple, we want to move the state-owned enterprises to the same standard as listed public companies.
Yes.
So a simple thing
crucial.
like financial statements, they need to be published in a timely manner,
Right.
right? Empowering boards to actually oversee and advise management. You know, these things are important things. So a lot of the best practices call for meeting similar standards to public companies. So all of that I'm saying is just elements that I identify as key developments that we can watch, that if those things continue to develop and we continue to move in a positive direction, then we really are building a base that will improve our growth trajectory, right? And I mean, we've been there before. 2007, we cleared 3% GDP growth.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah, Jamaica can do it.
Yes.
We know we can do it. And if we make those kind of structural reforms and start to hit at that crime monster that cost us 5-7% of GDP, we can really get going. But you know, I don't want to paint our fantasy picture. Those things we spoke about to move against corruption and public sector transformation, we have to work at them.
That's right. It's
to
gonna
really
take
do
time.
that step change. Yeah, so we continue to monitor it. But, you know, there are actions that have been taken that build confidence.
Yes.
And we want to be right there in the mix to exploit the opportunities that come from each incremental action.
That's right. No, man, that's very powerful. I think that's a good place to end it, because you've made a strong case that at the very least, we're at a base and we can watch for certain things. If we continue in this trajectory, there's opportunities that abound, right?
Yes.
So I want us to transition to a segment that we did last time.
Yeah.
Where we had the behind the scenes questions.
Yeah.
Right?
The fun stuff.
We have our guys behind the camera who, as they've heard all of this, they can say, okay, bring some clarity on that. What you meant about this. And so we're going to have that time now.
Yeah. But right before we say, I'll just say this.
Yes.
Institutional strengthening is a big part of the progress that we've made, right?
Yes.
So we have operationally independent Bank of Jamaica, right? So they're moving to a situation where they are just focused on ensuring low inflation and low and predictable inflation for the Jamaican people.
Yes.
So that's important. That's a big deal.
It is.
Right? That's a big deal. And we're working on a fiscal council that will be in a position to kind of like what Epoch had done, say, hey, what this move by government will cause our debt to go up, or it will retard the progress we've made. Okay. So that's an important institution. And we're increasing our resilience to natural disaster risks. So we are putting money away for the first time in size to help insure ourselves against the risks from natural disaster. And our finance minister and the Bank of Jamaica governor are both former CEOs. So we trust that they understand growth of our bottom line growth of our country. So, you know, there's a lot of confidence there, and we wait to see.
All right.
Wait to see.
Man, that's good.
So
that's good.
So yeah, guys, we can talk. Y'all have questions?
Yes. So I want to touch on infrastructure since I'm really interested in that.
All right.
What would you? So you're saying in the 80s or
70s, 80s, yeah,
we had up to 17% GDP spend on infrastructure. Now we're at 1%.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a big jump.
That is a huge jump.
Do you think we can get there by, vision, was it 2030?
2030.
You know, where do you think our infrastructure spend can get to by then?
Yeah, well, I mean, that would be up to the government, right?
Repeat the question.
In the 70s and 80s, we got as high as 17% of GDP on spent on capital spending, right? And we're at 1% now. So that's a huge jump. Do you think we can get back close to that number by 2030? Is that the question?
Yeah.
All right. So it would be a policy, it'd be a government decision ultimately. But if we just look at the numbers, we would think that the answer is yes. The opportunity is definitely there. So we're at 1% now. If you look at the projections as they stand as of the last formal review, currently, if debt is at 98.5% of GDP, by 2022, 2023 financial year, they're projecting it to be below 70, right? So that's more space, right? Mark you, we're holding it tight to continue to bring down the debt, but at that point, you have a lot of opportunity to spend more, right? To spend more on infrastructure. And if your spend on infrastructure gets you the concomitant dollars of growth, your debt is stable.
Yeah.
You understand? So you're not necessarily increasing the debt, but you have more fiscal space. So if the government wanted to, right, you could envision a situation of getting to 5% in that timeline, which is a huge.
Yeah. It's 5 times what we have now.
Yes.
It's 15 times what we had before.
And you see the impact on unemployment even more. People have jobs, so people have to do all of these infrastructure work. So you see the jobs coming in. You see what that means: more pay, more spending. That means everywhere in the economy. So I think that is definitely a big deal. It's a big deal.
Yeah, big opportunity.
Another question. With the recent talk about JPS being put up for an IPO, and a lot of other energy, whether solar, etc., companies, soon, I mean, there's talk of new companies coming out. What would you say to, you think it's a worthy investment to diversify, to take money out of another industry, since this industry hasn't really been open to us before?
Yeah. So David was just asking about the energy sector. There's talks of JPS coming out with an IPO, and there are other things there. People have not been in that industry right now. As far as an investor, there's not been much opportunity there.
Yeah.
What do you think about it? Is this somewhere where people need to be looking?
Yeah, and I think he was asking about other energy plays as well.
Yeah.
Well, yes. I mean, short answer is definitely very interesting to look at for the sake of diversification. Right. Investors in Wigton did pretty well.
Yeah.
Right. So that gave you the diversification play, but you also got return. Right. So that was an important move. So JPS in particular is a unique company in Jamaica. It's sole distributor and of electricity, right? So, like you said, monopoly license. That's always a good business to be in, right?
Right. It's a commodity that we all need.
It is.
We need energy. And that's the reality. And even now, even with the alternative that are there, so whether it be solar and people setting up solar, you still have to have relationship with JPS. So at the end of the day, you can't cut out this business right now. And so
hybrid cars.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, again, the firm would have to form an opinion on IPO when it finally comes out. But by way of diversification, for sure, in terms of importance to the economy, JPS is right up there.
Yeah.
Right. So it's interesting from that perspective. And what we were talking about, they build infrastructure. They certainly build infrastructure, and it's critical infrastructure as well. And if you look at JPS capital spending plans, they're huge. They're huge. I mean, they're on the order, they $500 million US. Those are giant numbers in this economy. So they definitely are walking the walk of what we're talking about in terms of expanding and modernizing the electrical generation capacity other countries. So for all those reasons, it's interesting.
Right.
And it definitely does speak to what we're talking about in terms of opportunities coming up within the current paradigm. And like David said, it will give investors an opportunity to get exposure to a space they haven't.
That's right. That's right. Well, just as we wrap up the time, is it a bubble or it's a base? We see that it looks like this could be a base, and there are things that we need you to be looking out for. We encourage you to speak to an investment advisor, give us a call. If you have any questions about some of the things that we discussed, or maybe questions you would love answered in this Brain Trust podcast, shoot those out to us, put it in the messages below, or send us an email at makingmoney@barita.com. So that's been it for the Barita Brain Trust podcast. We'll see you next time.